I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand that every word of this is true. 2 months ago, I found out that a stranger had been living inside my apartment. Not breaking in, not visiting. Living. Eating my food, using my things. Sleeping 10 feet above my kitchen while I cooked dinner every night. It started with small things. A box of cereal that I knew was half full was suddenly almost empty. A bag of bread had fewer slices than I remembered. A bottle of soda I hadn't opened was cracked at the seal. I live alone. I don't sleepwalk. I don't have blackouts. I know what I buy, and I know how much of it I use. At first, I told myself I was being stupid, that I'd eaten more than I thought or miscounted. Everyone does that, right? You forget a late night snack. You don't remember finishing the crackers. Then the toilet seat was up. I never leave the seat up, ever. It's a habit from growing up with sisters. The seat is always down. Always. But I came home from work on a Tuesday and the toilet seat was up. I stood in the bathroom doorway and stared at it and felt something cold crawl up my spine. I checked the apartment. Every room. Every closet. Under the bed. Behind the shower curtain. Nothing. No one. All the windows were locked. The front door was locked. I told myself the building maintenance must have come in for something. That made sense. That had to be it. But the food kept disappearing. A week later, I noticed my electric bill was higher than usual. Not a huge spike, but enough to notice. I hadn't changed anything. Same routines. Same usage. I called the power company and they said usage had been slightly elevated for the past 2 months. 2 months. Something wasn't right and I couldn't shake the feeling. So I ordered a cheap security camera off the internet. Small. Wireless. I set it up on top of the refrigerator, angled toward the kitchen, and connected it to an app on my phone that would alert me if it detected motion. The first 2 nights, nothing. The camera triggered once for a shadow, once for my cat jumping on the counter. On the third night, I was at work pulling a late shift. My phone buzzed at 2:14 in the morning. Motion detected. I opened the app and pulled up a live feed. For a second, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The kitchen was dark. The only light was the dim glow from the stove clock. But something was moving near the ceiling. Something above the refrigerator, near the top of the wall where there was a small storage hatch that I'd never opened because I assumed it was just a sealed utility space. The hatch was open, and a person was climbing out of it. I watched on my phone screen as a woman lowered herself out of the opening in my wall. Feet first, slowly, carefully, like she'd done it 100 times before. She dropped to the kitchen floor. She was wearing my clothes. A t-shirt I thought I'd lost in the laundry weeks ago. She walked to the refrigerator and opened it. The light from inside lit up her face. She looked calm, relaxed, like she was in her own kitchen getting a midnight snack. She took out a container of leftover pasta, my pasta, the dinner I had made that night. She opened it, grabbed a fork from the drawer, and stood there eating it in the dark. I couldn't breathe. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot at work, watching a stranger eat my food in my kitchen at 2 in the morning. A stranger who had been living in a crawl space above my kitchen wall, who had been coming out at night while I slept for weeks, maybe months. She finished eating. She rinsed the fork and put it back in the drawer. She wiped down the container and put it back in the fridge. But she didn't climb back up. She walked out of the kitchen, off camera, into the rest of my apartment. I sat in my car staring at an empty kitchen for 11 minutes. 11 minutes where this woman was somewhere in my apartment doing God knows what while the camera pointed at nothing. Then she came back. She walked back into frame, calm as ever, climbed up into the hatch, and pulled it closed behind her. When the police searched the crawl space later, they found something I haven't told many people. They found a phone, her phone, and on that phone were photos. Photos of my apartment, photos of my things, my closet, my bathroom, photos of me, sleeping, taken from inside my bedroom. She'd been standing over me while I slept. I don't know how many times. I don't know how close she got. But she had photos of me unconscious in my own bed taken from a distance of about 3 feet. She cleaned up after herself. That's the part that still gets to me. She was careful. She was meticulous. She didn't want me to know. I called the police from the parking lot. I did not go home. 2 officers met me at my building and I let them in. I showed them the video on my phone. One of them went pale. They found her in the crawl space. She had set up a whole little area in there. A blanket, a pillow, phone chargers plugged directly into the building's electrical wiring, empty food containers stacked in a corner. She'd been coming and going through a vent that connected to the fire escape on the outside of the building. She'd been there for weeks, possibly longer. The officers couldn't say for sure. She was arrested. I was told she had a history of this. Apparently there's a word for it. Frogging. People who secretly move into occupied homes and live alongside the residents without them knowing. They learn your schedule. They know when you leave and when you come back. They move around your house while you're asleep or at work. They eat your food. They use your bathroom. They watch you. I moved out the next week. I didn't pack. I hired movers to come get my stuff while I wasn't there because I couldn't walk back into that apartment. I couldn't stand in that kitchen knowing that for weeks, maybe months, every time I sat at that counter eating breakfast, a person was lying 10 feet above my head in the dark, listening to me chew. I live somewhere else now. A newer building. No crawl spaces. No storage hatches. No gaps in the walls. I check every vent, every panel, every opening in the ceiling. I check them when I get home. I check them before I go to bed. I check them in the middle of the night when I can't sleep. People tell me I'm paranoid, but they've never watched a stranger climb out of their wall at 2 in the morning wearing our clothes. There's a reason I sit at the front of the bus now. Every single time, and if the bus is full and the only open seat is in the back, I don't get on. I wait for the next one. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care if I'm late. I will never sit in the back of a bus at night again. About a year ago, I was finishing up my last semester of college. I was working part-time at a department store in the mall to cover expenses. The job was fine. The hours were the problem. I didn't have a car yet, and my apartment was a solid 2-hour bus ride from work. If I got a closing shift, I wouldn't clock out until 11 at night and wouldn't get home until somewhere around 1 in the morning. I told my managers this. I asked them to keep me on day shifts. They said they'd try. They didn't try very hard. One week they scheduled me for 5 closing shifts in a row. When I complained, they shrugged. Said it was all they had. I was annoyed, but I needed the money, so I dealt with it. My mom wasn't happy about it either. She lived about 40 minutes away, and sometimes she'd come pick me up. But she had my younger sisters at home, and getting them all up and out that late wasn't realistic. So most nights, I took the bus. It was a Wednesday. I had just finished my shift and I was exhausted. I got to the bus stop around 11:15 and climbed on when it arrived. The bus was mostly empty. A few people scattered up front. I walked to the back and sat down in one of the last rows, put my earbuds in and started listening to music on my iPod. About 20 minutes into the ride, my iPod died. The battery had been going for a while and I kept meaning to charge it before work, but I always forgot. I was irritated, but it wasn't a big deal. I left the earbuds in anyway and pulled out my phone to play a crossword puzzle, something to keep me busy for the rest of the ride. That's when I heard the voices. 2 men had gotten on the bus a few stops back. They were sitting about 2 seats behind me, across the aisle. I hadn't paid attention to them when they boarded, but now, with no music playing and my earbuds giving the impression that I couldn't hear anything, their conversation drifted forward clearly. They were speaking Spanish. Here's something most people don't know about me. My stepmother is Puerto Rican. I grew up hearing Spanish at home almost every day. I don't speak it fluently, but I understand a lot more than people assume. Enough to follow a conversation. Enough to catch specific words and phrases and piece together what's being said. At first, I wasn't really listening. It felt rude to eavesdrop, even accidentally. I kept my eyes on my crossword and tried to tune it out. Then one of them said something that made my stomach drop. He said the black girl up there. My ears locked in. I kept my face completely still. Kept staring at my phone. Kept the earbuds in. And I listened. They were talking about me. The things they were saying made my skin crawl. I'm not going to repeat the specifics because I still can't think about it without feeling sick. But the short version is this. They knew which stop was mine. They had figured it out either from watching me ride this route before or from paying attention earlier in the trip. They knew my stop was the second to last one before the bus looped back to the terminal. They knew it was in a residential area with no streetlights. They knew that at 1 in the morning, no one would be around. And they were talking about what they were going to do when I got off. My heart was beating so fast I was sure they could hear it. My hands were shaking. I gripped my phone tighter and tried to think. I was about 20 minutes from my stop. 20 minutes to figure out how to survive this. My first instinct was to get off early. Just stand up at the next stop and get off the bus and run. But I didn't know the area. I didn't know where I'd be getting off. And if they followed me off the bus in some random neighborhood in the middle of the night, I'd be even more alone than I would be at my own stop. I could go to the bus driver, walk up to the front and say something, but if they saw me talking to the driver, they'd know something was wrong. They'd know I understood them, and I had no idea how they'd react. I looked at my phone. I opened a text message to my mom. "Mom, can you please meet me at the bus stop?" I hit send and stared at the screen. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. No response. She was asleep. Of course she was asleep. It was after midnight. The bus kept moving. We were getting closer to my stop. I could feel the distance shrinking. I called her cell phone. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. My chest tightened. I called the house phone. It rang 3 times. Then she picked up. Her voice was groggy, half asleep. She asked what was going on. This was the moment. I knew the men behind me could hear my voice even if they couldn't understand English perfectly. I knew I had to sound normal. Casual, happy even. Like nothing was wrong. Like this was the most boring phone call in the world. So I said, in the most cheerful voice I could manage, "Hey Mom, did you get my text? I sent you a picture of these jeans I want to order online. I really need your opinion. Can you check your phone?" She was confused. I could hear it in her voice. She said she didn't see any picture. I kept going. I said I really wanted her to see the jeans before I ordered them and asked if she could come meet me at the bus stop so I could show her in person. I told her I'd be there in about 15 minutes. There was a pause, a long one, and then my mom's voice changed. She didn't ask any more questions. She didn't say, "What are you talking about?" She just said, "Okay, baby, I'll be there." She understood. Something in my voice, something underneath the fake cheerfulness told her everything she needed to know. That's the thing about mothers, they hear what you're not saying. I hung up and sat there staring at my crossword, not reading a single clue, counting the minutes. Behind me, the 2 men were still talking. They hadn't changed their tone, they hadn't gotten suspicious. As far as they knew, I was just some girl on her phone, earbuds in, oblivious. The bus turned onto my street. I could see my stop up ahead. The bench, the sign, the dark stretch of sidewalk beyond it with no streetlights. And standing right next to the sign, headlights still on, car door open, was my mother. She wasn't alone. My stepfather was in the driver's seat. The car was running. I stood up, walked to the front of the bus, and got off. I didn't look back. I didn't turn around. I walked straight to my mom and she grabbed me and pulled me into the car so fast I barely got the door closed before my stepfather pulled away from the curb. I broke down in the back seat. I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. My mom was twisted around in her seat with her hand on my knee, asking me what happened, what's going on, talk to me, and I told her everything. My stepfather drove around the block and came back to the bus stop. He wanted to see if the men had gotten off. The stop was empty. The bus was gone. We drove the surrounding streets for about 10 minutes. Nothing. We filed a police report the next day. I gave a description of both men. I told them what route I was on and what time it happened. The officer wrote everything down and said they'd look into it. They never called back. I finished out that semester and quit the department store job the following week. I never took another closing shift again. Not there. Not anywhere. I got a different job closer to campus where I could walk home before dark. My mom still brings it up sometimes. Not the details, just the phone call. She told me once that when she picked up and heard my voice, she knew instantly that something was wrong. She said my voice sounded like someone who was smiling while drowning. I think about that a lot. I think about what would have happened if my iPod hadn't died. If the battery had held out for another 40 minutes, I would have walked off that bus with my earbuds in, music playing, completely unaware of what was waiting for me at that dark, empty stop. I would have started walking down that unlit street toward my apartment, and I never would have heard them coming. A dead battery saved my life. And sometimes late at night, when I'm lying in bed and the apartment is quiet, I wonder how many times something like that has happened to someone else. Someone whose iPod didn't die. Someone whose mom didn't pick up the phone. Someone who got off at that last stop alone.